You guys know in The Office when there's the scene with Jim and Dwight, and I think it's Jim who's actually holding the sign, and Dwight erases from it 0 days since our last nonsense. I feel like that's what we're doing here because we have speculation once again that yes, there are in this case now teams plural in the Big 12 that prefer the ACC. Boy, we're going to have to address it. It was said by a reporter, and it was said by a reporter that I definitely respect, a guy that I have tried to get on the channel before, and maybe we'll be able to before too long to talk about this. But look, that's going to be the lead headline today. I was not expecting that to be, but it seems crazy that we're seeing just a couple of weeks after the Utah noise coming from a random reporter in New York that they perhaps would have preferred the ACC. Utah had to shut it down. Now it comes back. An ACC reporter and Brian Murphy, who went on 365 Sports earlier today, has said the same type of thing. I would imagine Utah is probably one of the schools that he is insinuating here when he says that Big 12 schools would prefer actually to be in the ACC. And he said this when asked, and it was a great question from Paul Catalina. And let me make this clear. I am in no way putting any of this on 365. They did a great interview that was very insightful about the current situation in the ACC and what's going on with North Carolina. And it was Brian Murphy who just kind of casually threw in at the end. I think that what could happen is the ACC may be able to add schools from the Big 12. I think the Big 12 schools might actually prefer some of them to be in the ACC. I will give you the full quote here in just a moment as we get rolling, but that is the context of it. Again, great work by 365. I would say a controversial statement there from Brian Murphy, certainly to those of us in Big 12 country. But is that in any way feasible? Like, are we in any way thinking that that is a feasible thing? It's tough for me to wrap my mind around it, but we'll dive into it on the show today. It's frankly just a little bit annoying. And I know that the Big 12 is annoyed about this. I mean, the fact that Utah had to make the statement that they did after the stuff that came from the New York Post reporter, I think tells you enough exactly where the Big 12 is, that they're kind of fed up with this. I would have to imagine that they're not going to be really pleased about this. Nobody's fault, but just the fact that ACC country apparently still believes that somebody would want to come join that conference after Clemson and Florida State leave. And that's a huge issue in all of this. Would they be the only ones to leave? Would they even have a conference to really be joining? It's wild. Look, we know the conference realignment world is wild. People have lots of opinions. This was one, though, that definitely caught me off guard. Another opinion that caught me off guard today, not today, this week, since the last time I spoke to you on Sunday, is Joel Klatt, man. Joel Klatt just going all in on Colorado. And I want to take some time to really react to what Joel Klatt had to say. It was on the Colin Cowherd show. In fact, I believe I forgot to pull that up. I'm going to have to do that midstream for you guys as I get going. But I want to react to it because Joel Klatt, look, he's a Colorado guy. I can understand having a little bit of Homer and what it is that you're going to say. That's fine. We all do. You guys know I definitely bleed purple, and that comes out sometimes, though I try very hard on this channel to be as unbiased as I possibly can. But when we start talking about Colorado and the Big 12 championship, I get very annoyed, not just because I don't agree with it. It's not so much that, but it's because those sorts of takes push us into irrational discussions about Colorado where you can't have like a real serious discussion about Colorado if you're going to go that far with it. And I thought Klatt, instead of towing the line, pushed a little bit too far off into the Colorado Coach Prime fanboy territory. And it's a disrespect, frankly, to the league is really what it is. It's a disrespect to the Big 12. And I sense some of that just comes out of people like John Canzano, who has made the statement before that he thinks that Utah will roll through the Big 12 and that Colorado can definitely have a lot of success here in this new conference. So Joel Klatt, who I do like, I think he's excellent at his job. I think he's a tremendous analyst, and I would say that I still definitely respect him. He's given me a great interview before when I was doing the radio show in Manhattan. I was disappointed by Joel Klatt's comments on Colorado. And I also heard a great Josh Pate take on like what happens anytime anybody wants to discuss Colorado. On the ACC front, I would tell you that North Carolina appears to be like the state of North Carolina appears to be foreshadowing what they think is going to happen with North Carolina and NC State. And by the way, it would not be good for this whole scenario of, Big 12 teams wanting to jump in and join the ACC. But that to me is that they're kind of setting the stage for North Carolina to leave for somewhere, the SEC or the Big 10, and NC State to get left behind. We're going to discuss what happened there. It's not a bill that has passed yet, but there's been all this posturing and stuff going on in the state of North Carolina. This time we have like a bill that's been proposed that would force everybody to play everybody. And while I think on one level that is something that's very good for the states, like I wish more states would do that. Play the school. It would be great for rivalries. It would be great for, we're losing a lot of rivalries right now in realignment, right? We need to make sure that those games get played. We don't need to be losing Bedlam. Right? Like that's very stupid. So I appreciate the idea that they're doing it. I just feel like it may be telegraphing a bit where things are going. So we've got that on the docket too today. What was it? Oh, and if you are somebody that, like myself is kind of ready to fight the power too, okay? Trademark, fight the power too. Not a big fan of the Big Ten and the SEC. You will definitely get some entertainment value out of what Message Board Geniuses was pushing out this week. The reactions of fans from one Big Ten fan base who think that they are getting second or third tier treatment in their new conference. It has started before they even got there to be losing games. It has started before they have even been able to lose games, which I figured this would definitely be coming for some folks. I just thought it would take a little bit more time than what it actually has so far. So that's the show today, at least what I've got. But you guys are always a part of the show. The way that you get involved, click the $ below the chat box to attach a donation to your chat, make it a super chat, and you can hop into the chat tonight as well. Really appreciate all of you guys who do that. Could not do it without all of your support. Genuinely appreciate that. If you want to support the channel in a totally free way that is also just awesome, like the video, make sure you're subscribed to the channel, click the bell so that you get alerts, but liking the video and leaving comments, whether it is in the regular chat or just underneath in the comment section of the video, especially if you are watching this after it aired live, that is very, very helpful as well. And if you are not catching it live and you still want to be a part of the show and make sure your question or comment gets heard, and I know this will be one where there are lots of opinions, John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo is where you can leave your question or comment. If you leave a donation there, I will kick off the next show with your question or comment. So it will not be long before you are right in the heat of things. So that's the table setter. That's where we are at. Obviously, this is going to be a busy show here and a lot on hand. So, okay. Brian Murphy is at WRAL in North Carolina. He's a guy that's been doing a lot of reporting on the issues that are happening within the state with North Carolina and NC State, the Board of Governors, the North Carolina Board of Regents. There's a lot to parse through, par for the course to this day and age in college athletics. This time around, though, it seemed to be pretty innocuous to me. Most of the interview that he did on 365 Sports was pretty innocuous, just reacting to the story, which I can give you the brief headline on that because it does help set this up, or a brief summation of that. North Carolina and NC State, in a move reflecting volatile and changing times in college athletics, North Carolina state legislatures advanced a bill Tuesday that would require the state's two largest public universities to play each other annually in football and basketball and play three other top public school systems or public system schools regularly. So North Carolina and NC State would have to play each other. And then they would also have to play App State, East Carolina, and Charlotte on a rotational basis. That was the story. And that was what most of this interview was about with Brian Murphy. And again, credit to those guys for getting him locked down. He's been a tough guy for me to try and attain before. So great work by 365 on this. But toward the end of the interview, Paul just asked a question about, hey, what's going to happen here? Look, Clemson and Florida State, he set the table. Clemson and Florida State are going to get out of this thing. Like, they're leaving. There's nothing you can do to stop this. So what What happens once they leave? How does the ACC react to that? And this is the quote. Part of his quote, part of the long answer. He said, I know Big 12 people don't want to think this, but I do think there are some members of the Big 12 who would prefer to be with the ACC. Stanford and Cal give them some clout academically and athletically in some ways that could help them lure a Western division. Now, that was it. And he moved on past that and then went to like, hey, it might be more of like the Ivy League sort of thing. And that there's been discussion about that it would be like a kind of like a light Ivy League light, a diet Ivy League, if you will, that the ACC could set up. I was going to try and put that quote up for you guys in full, but unfortunately that did not work. I am sorry. I'll give it to you one more time. I know Big 12 people don't want to think this, but I do think there are some members of the Big 12 who would prefer to be with the ACC. Stanford and Cal give them some clout academically and athletically in some ways that could help them lure a Western division. I don't really look. I'm seeing this a lot. Where's Mid Florida Academy? This one, because I've seen this like 3 times. Mid Florida Academy. Kurtz hates the ACC. I don't really hate the ACC. I do. Honestly, what I hate more about the ACC is I would try to tell you that the Big 12 has been a better football conference than the ACC, especially with Clemson falling a little bit. I can understand why you would think that, like, I hate the conference. I do pick on Clemson falling behind the elite levels that they have been at. I think they are falling behind. I think Florida State may be taking up that mantle. But I'm not like actively rooting for the ACC's downfall. It is a bit different situation to me than the Pac-12 was, because the Pac-12 I felt like was much more directly consequential to the Big 12. I think the Big 12 can gain something here, but I don't know that it's nearly as much as what was at stake last summer. So I do just want to make that point. ACC football, I do think, is a little boring. That's basically it. I think ACC football is a little boring, and it's never done a whole lot for me. So that is a bias that I will admit to you, but I don't think it's like this outright hate for the ACC. And I will just tell you on this topic, I don't think it makes really any sense. I just don't think it really makes any sense what Brian is saying here. I guess maybe if we're going to really parse the details here, what he is saying is there are some members of the Big 12 who would prefer to be in the ACC. He did not say the ACC is going to take Big 12 members or that these Big 12 members would leave for the ACC. So the part that I think does not make sense is that anybody would actually pull the trigger. I also don't really fully understand why anybody would truly want to be there unless it's, hey, is there a university president that says, well, I would love to be rubbing elbows with Duke and Wake Forest? Okay, maybe I could buy that, but I don't think that the totality of a university would really be on board with something like that at this point. That's a tough one for me to believe. And then we've got the whole question of, what schools are we talking about here, which is where I'll bring in Will. And Will, I appreciate the support of the channel here tonight. Will says, got to assume West Virginia and Cincy would too. I think that's probably a reaction to the thumbnail on the video where I put, which, I probably should have gone with the West Virginia logo there. I don't know why I didn't think about that. But my first 2 thoughts were like, well, Utah, obviously, there was just rumor and innuendo about that within the last 2 weeks. And then on top of that, I'd throw in UCF because I know, like UCF's in the state of Florida, Florida State right there. Seemed like there had been a yearning by some at UCF for that before they came to the Big 12. But since UCF got to the Big 12, I will say it does seem like UCF is pretty locked in here. They seem to be pretty all about the Big 12 thing, especially now that they've experienced a year in the conference. So I don't know. That was just my speculation there on like who could he possibly be talking about because he mentioned specific teams. West Virginia, okay. And I know, I see Kuz in here. I know there are some West Virginia fans in here. I am definitely curious for your opinions on this. I think there was a time where that was true for West Virginia, but I don't know that that's really, truly the case now that they look and see what's going on in that conference. And the ultimate goal for everybody now is like, hey, let's let's just make it to the next wave, whenever the next cutoff is going to be in the Big Ten or the SEC, like however far down that goes. That's the ultimate goal here. And so that to me just really makes it seem weird that there would be much speculation or much real desire for anybody to want to go from one to the other if you're not in the upper tier. Like, what is really the motivation? It would be messy. It would potentially be expensive with the grant of rights, which is another piece of this to me. If you're going to have to get out of the Big 12 grant of rights, that's not going to be cheap, or at the very least, you'll be paying a lot of legal fees and going through exactly what Florida State and Clemson are going through right now. If you think there's some way that document is not ironclad, but even then, like, I'll direct you back to Doug Rohan, who's come on a couple of times and outlined all this from a legal perspective and said, like, hey, there's actually a difference between the ACC grant of rights and the Big 12 grant of rights. And that, like, one sentence, I think that was actually the title of the video, like, one sentence could really be costing the ACC here, that there was a one sentence difference between each of those grant of rights that really genuinely hurts the ACC, and that the Big 12's is better. So I don't think that the Big 12 would have a whole lot of problem holding somebody's feet to the fire there and making them pay up if they wanted to leave. And then you're going to do that to do it for how long, and who is actually left in the ACC. We haven't even tackled here if Florida State and Clemson leave. I mean, North Carolina is going to be gone. North Carolina being gone would still mean that they have 15 members, which does hit the threshold that Brett McMurphy reported on. That he said, hey, you've got to be at 15 in the ACC to be able to still hit the ESPN contract quota. So they would still have that, assuming that ESPN picks up the look-in that they have coming up here for 2027. They would still have that, but man, it's going to be a weak conference, and then you're one school away from it all crumbling. And like Miami, I know Miami has not done a whole lot now, but if they're really going to sit idly by and watch Florida State, Clemson, and North Carolina leave, and they'll say, well, we'll stick around, we'll be all right. I mean, Miami's going to be gone. I mean, the conference would, I think, crumble before any of this would actually be a reality or something possible to actually talk about here. So I don't think it is a very realistic scenario, no matter what the actual desires are. So then it kind of comes back to, I know the comment was made about, hey, you hate the ACC. Why do you hate the ACC? It feels to me almost like a little bit of sentiment coming from the ACC of sort of the opposite, which, like, hey, is totally fair and fine. Not that I think they hate the Big 12, but it feels a little bit more to me like, hey, the Pac-12, which was part of the alliance and more of like the stuffy vibes of like, we are the upper crust academic elites of the world. The ACC definitely has some of that too. It feels to me a little bit like some of that kind of attitude seeping through. And that's not really like a personal accusation here at Brian Murphy necessarily. I just feel like there still is some of that. There's like little twinges of that. And that's kind of what comes with being in the different places you're at. I said I think ACC football is dreadfully boring generally. I kind of think that about the Big Ten too, outside of the very top. So I have my biases based on where I'm from. Like, Big 12 country for a long time, it was high flying offense. I want to see much more of that. Watching a lot of ACC football, Big Ten football has not really done it for me. So we all have our little biases, and that feels to me like some of that coming through. Brian Murphy's also a reporter. I'm not a reporter. I'm an opinion guy. So I'm sure he's perhaps heard sources that would indicate some of that. Maybe it's leftover West Virginia stuff combined with the Utah rumors from the last couple of weeks. I don't know exactly what it is. Those would be schools that I would speculate about. I know that on like 365, they threw up their graphic. I think they had Kansas and TCU there also. I don't know. Kansas, to me, they're already like fringe. We've talked about Kansas and the SEC, and I do think that what Greg Flugar says about that would make some sense, that Sankey would be eyeing some big basketball brands now that they've got football about as taken care of as you possibly could. So go get a basketball brand. Your Mark's emphasizing basketball and how much it's worth. I understand all of that and how it could get to Kansas maybe makes the cut if they're going to expand by another 4 teams or so. And Kansas already had the Big Ten. I would just say flirtation more from the Kansas side than the Big Ten side, but that already happened. I don't like, why would Kansas really be that interested in the ACC? I'd have a tough time believing any of that. And then, as I said, UCF just based on proximity there. TCU, I mean, TCU, there, if you believe the Mac Engel reports from a couple of years ago, there was some discussion with the Pac-12 at one point in time there. Maybe they would have a bit of a wandering eye. I don't, feels a little more loose to me. I would think this is probably much more based around West Virginia and Utah, and there you can get that S to make it plural, and you have teams, and ta-da. So I guess the bottom line here is, regardless of what the deep down desires are of anybody, I don't think that there's any realistic chance of this happening. I don't see the scenario where this plays out and makes any level of sense for anybody to actually go through and do. I mean, if you listen to Josh Furlong, who was great, Utah beat guy for KSAL.com, who was on the channel, posted a couple of videos with him. I mean, he kind of outlined like, yeah, I mean, Utah's eyeing the Big Ten eventually, as anybody would in their shoes. A football program that has won the Pac-12 2 of the last 3 years, you'd be sitting there thinking like, hey, how can we get ourselves into the Big Ten? I don't know why a messy divorce, potentially costly divorce to go to the ACC at any point in time would be worth that, especially after Florida State and Clemson would already be bailing. And how could the ACC possibly put the Band-Aid on fast enough to keep 15 teams there to make it all happen, right? Very much off-season type of fodder. I understand it's one line in an interview, but it's just been weird to me that this comes right on the heels of the Utah stuff that turned into a big discussion in and of itself as well. Is this just some last-ditch like PR effort from the ACC here to try and keep itself alive, knowing what the ultimate outcome is going to be here with Florida State and Clemson? I don't know. But the timing was very, very interesting to me. Let's go into some super chats here. Appreciate you guys supporting the channel. Like Juan Sex Fitty One. It's been a minute. What's up, Juan Sex Fitty One? Big 12 fans can hate Utah and our fan base all they want, but we've been the most talked about program this offseason. You know, Juan Sex, if I had $1 for every time I've said that. Juan Sex, have you heard of a program? It starts with a C. It ends with an Colorado. They've got a coach who is talked about quite a bit. His name starts with a C. It ends with an Och Prime. There's quite a bit of discussion about the Colorado Buffaloes. In fact, as I was preparing for the Joel Klatt part of the show today, I was looking through YouTube and seeing like all the Colorado stuff. Like I was blown away. Like, there's a guy who's like basically built an entire channel with like 50,000 subscribers off of talking about Coach Prime and every little thing in the Colorado program. So I would debate you on that, my friend. I assume you were talking about most talked about Big 12 program, which, okay, you know, if we're going beyond that, there are obviously plenty of programs that have been talked about more. But within the Big 12, you're not even the most talked about four-corner school that has entered the conference. Right or wrong, I mean, you're certainly a much better football team. I would much rather play Colorado than I would you on the football field, but I would disagree with that a little bit, 1651. That is not disrespect to Utah at all. I don't think, like, Kyle Whittingham does not want to be the most talked about team out there, right? He'd rather just fly under the radar. That's kind of your vibe and your thing, and that's a part of what makes Utah so damn good all the time. So the fan base has earned some of the ire, at least the online fan base, right? Which Twitter's not real life, I understand. The online fan base has earned a little bit of that. And I have a ton of respect for Utah's football program, and I don't think that the loud portion of the fan base online represents like all Utah fans. And I would, as I've said many times, I would love to kind of bridge this gap. I don't want a crazy adversarial relationship. Although having rivals can make the conference good and fun. So Utah in that way does serve a really nice purpose if you want to turn into a villain. But I don't think that statement is totally accurate, because I think Coach Prime just always controls the news cycle. Like, Stephen A is not out there talking about Utah. You can get Stephen A talking about Coach Prime, and that happens quite a bit based on how tumultuous of an offseason that they've had. They've generated quite a bit of discussion. But if you want second, I'll give you that. You got second. All right. You can be in the Big 12 championship game of media narratives and see if you can upset Coach Prime and company. Anyway, appreciate you, Juan Sex 51. Will, what's up, Will? Will says, besides BYU, which Big 12 schools will the ACC veto? Well, is the ACC, I understand the thought there. Is the ACC in a position that they could veto anybody if Florida State and Clemson leave and they're just desperately trying to hang on to that 15 number? Again, a scenario that I don't see ever playing out. Like, this is very much like we're doing the hypothetical realignment kind of discussion here. But I don't know that they're really in position to veto anybody. Would I see them taking like K-State and Iowa State? I would not think that they would be real keen on that. But I don't know if they're, desperate times, right? It might be desperate times for them at that point, but appreciate you, Will. Thank you for being here. Matthew, what's up, Matthew? Matthew, thanks for being here and thanks for your support of the channel. Matthew says, if stability is part of the equation, hard to see the ACC desired over the Big 12 for any team, especially a team located in the Midwest or the Southwest. Yeah, and the statement here was, I will reiterate in fairness to Brian Murphy, that some Big 12 teams would prefer to be in the ACC, not that they would actually go through the trouble of everything it would take to make that move and make it happen. Yes, in whatever scenario we would be painting where that could possibly be a thing, you would have lots of questions about the stability. I don't know how all that would shake out to where you'd feel really good and confident about the stability. Even if they put some kind of grant of rights in front of you at that point and say, hey, this is locked down. It's like, well, you were supposed to be the most locked down of anybody, right? Until 2036. And we saw that thing just blow up completely in your face based on what Clemson and Florida State have done. So yeah, I would think there would be some trust issues there. Now, relationships, what do I want to say? Reputations can be repaired. Just ask the Big 12. Reputations can be repaired. But it might be a little too far gone. Ron, thank you for your support. I don't see a question or comment associated with this, Ron, but I do appreciate your support of the channel, my friend. Thank you very much. You guys are active. I see. Do we have too many trolls in here? Maybe I should try to grab a moderator. If somebody wants to be a moderator, I used to have a couple. If somebody wants to be a moderator, hit me up in the DMs on Twitter at JL Kurtz. More than welcome to talk about some of that. Ron. Oh, there's Ron. Ron, you sound afraid it's going to happen. You make his point. Do I sound afraid? I feel like I've repeatedly said I don't see any scenario where this could actually play out. I also I don't think, if the Big 12 lost Utah tomorrow, the Big 12 would be just fine. They've got strength in numbers at this point with 16 schools. I don't know. I'm frankly not very worried at all here. So I guess thank you for paying $4 to make that point, because it was this $2. It was the other $2 where you couldn't figure out how to do it. But no, I don't feel very concerned about it really at all. So I think we're okay. What do we got, guys? Is it Utah fans? Who's stirring it up in here? Utah fans, the ACC mafia, what is it? Does the ACC have a mafia? Not even entirely sure there. Let me go ahead and get you the rest of the story of what is happening in North Carolina, the reason that Brian Murphy was on 365 Sports in the first place. In a move reflecting volatile and changing times in college athletics, North Carolina state legislators, advanced a bill Tuesday that would require the state's two largest public universities to play each other annually in football and basketball and play three top public system schools regularly. Under the measure, which cleared the House committee with no debate, the football and men's and women's basketball teams at UNC and NC State would be required to play each other at least once annually, starting with the 2025-26 school year. The bill also would direct the Wolfpack and Tar Heels to play East Carolina, Appalachian State, or Charlotte at least once every year in those sports. North Carolina and NC State have deep rivalries going back over 100 years, reinforced through their ACC membership. that ensures they play each other routinely. I mean, to me, this just very much seemed like foreshadowing. For all the talk that we've had for a while, and there has been plenty of, like, there's so much influence on the board of governors from the NC State side of things that NC State might be able to really staple itself to North Carolina and get on out of there into a Power 2 conference as well. This makes me think that everybody's looking around like we know what the inevitable is. And I would also go back to what Andrew Carter, who is a reporter in Raleigh, said on the channel not that long ago right here. And that was that, hey, I kind of have my doubts that would actually happen. He did not seem very bullish on that actually being something, when push came to shove, that would happen, which stands to reason logically. If you are the governing body that's overseeing these schools and you've got a chance for one of these schools to be a part of, like, the thing that matters most in college athletics and make that much more money for the state and be better for enrollment and all those things, and the option is, like, you got to either, like, the answer would be no from the SEC or whoever it would be. The answer would be no, or you can just let North Carolina go. I mean, you would be kind of doing a disservice to the state and the students and all that if you didn't just let them go. So that is, anytime there's a discussion about that with Board of Regents, Board of Governors, whatever, that's really what I default to, because I feel like at the end of the day, when push comes to shove, that's probably what would happen, because you would be kind of going against what would seem to be the actual mission here of making things better for all the students in the state if you didn't do that, if you didn't allow that to happen. So that, to me, makes a whole lot of sense. And this seems to be kind of an acquiescing to that. Like, just looking like, hey, this is probably what's going to happen. Like, we see the writing on the wall here. We know that Florida State and Clemson are way in this thing, and they're coming, like, the toothpaste is out of the tube, essentially. That's the best analogy I could give you on the ACC. The toothpaste is out of the tube, and I don't know if you've ever tried to put toothpaste back into a tube. You can't really do it. So there's no going back at this point. And they're looking around like, well, I mean, UNC, once that happens, UNC will have to be gone. We are the most coveted prize in realignment, not named Notre Dame. Now, as far as, like, the rest of this bill, like, that's the big picture to me. The big picture is, obviously, that's what it feels like is happening. In a vacuum, if I just saw this story in a vacuum without the context of conference realignment behind it, I would say this is great. This is awesome. I'm from the state of Kansas, okay? There's been a lot of discussion forever about, like, oh, well, KU and K-State should play Wichita State every single year in basketball, which I would love, or at least, some kind of rotation, play them regularly in basketball. And it's starting to happen more now, but for a while it did not. And, a lot of that was, like, when I was growing up, when I was a kid, K-State was going through the worst stretch of basketball in program history. It didn't serve them to go play Wichita State. But I think, like, more of this actually could be a very good thing for those states and developing rivalries and just making it more fun for everybody involved. I know it's not as fun for the big boy, because if you're North Carolina, you don't want to go play. How many overtimes did they play with App State? Was that last year or 2 years ago that they played App State, and a game that went into a ton of overtimes, and Mac Brown said, like, we're never doing that again. Yeah, they're not going to want to do that, but that doesn't mean it's not for the greater good of the state and the sport and everything that we love about college athletics. I mentioned it earlier, but, like, losing Bedlam is one of the dumbest, worst casualties possible that you could have in college football. It's atrocious that we're doing that. And, we took away Texas and Texas A&M. Kansas and Missouri have started playing a little bit now, but that's also very stupid that we lost that throughout the course of realignment. We're losing much more than we're gaining. So if we can take one of these back with North Carolina and NC State and get them to play and bring in some of the other smaller schools within the state, I think that's all excellent. I think that's great. I think we should definitely be doing that. But here, obviously, you have to kind of read the undertones and see, what does this really mean? Is this a foreshadowing that people with power and influence in the state of North Carolina either don't think this is going to happen for NC State, or they're at least just like, well, let's kind of hedge our bets. All right. We think there's a chance. We want NC State to be able to leave with North Carolina, but just in case, let's go ahead and make sure that they'll at least play each other Let's give them some kind of, I mean, it's a consolation prize. It's a very weak one at that in the grand scheme of things, but it would at least be something. It would be some form of a consolation prize there. And I know there's been speculation too about, look, UCLA has to pay the Cal tax, the calimony, as John Wilner brilliantly coined it. They've got to pay that. Maybe something like that would happen with North Carolina and NC State. This can be a part of it too. It gives NC State a game. They'll be able to sell tickets to that thing. I mean, you know that, especially the rivalry, I'm sure would amp up a notch or two if and when North Carolina actually were to leave. Just to finish this article, UNC and NC State have deep rivalries going back over 100 years, reinforced through their ACC conference membership that ensures they play each other routinely. But with the ACC's evolution, uncertain amid conference alignment, and schools chasing more revenues, the potential for UNC and NC State joining different conferences is not so far-fetched. The ACC is facing uncertainty about its long-term future as it continues to face a growing financial gap behind the Big Ten and Southeastern Conference. The bill still must clear 2 House committees before a floor vote. Willis said bill supporters have talked. Okay, so this is actually, let me draw your attention to this so you don't tune out the reading. I understand how you could tune it out. The bill still must clear 2 House committees before a floor vote. Willis said bill supporters have talked to the schools involved and have received no negative feedback so far. There is that. No negative feedback, even from UNC folks, apparently, here. He said he's also found support from officials in the state Senate, which would also have to approve such a mandate. Any final measure would go to Democratic Governor Roy Cooper, a UNC graduate. Got to include that. Anytime we're talking about important people in all of this, definitely need to know where they went to school. Absolutely need to know that. So this is not passed. This is not mandated yet. There are still some hurdles to clear, but it does seem like this has some real momentum. And the last time that this happened, it was something that went through. And that was when we were talking about the Board of Governors like forcing anybody who was going to leave to basically unveil all their plan, telegraph all their plans early, and you've got to submit, you've got to send it through the board. We have to approve it, the financial plan, all of those things. That wound up making its way through when it started just like this. So it would seem very on brand and in line with what's been happening in the state of North Carolina for this to also happen. Okay. If you want to be a part of the show tonight, click the $sign below the chat box to attach a donation there. Make your chat a super chat. It will pin it in a separate column for me and ensures that you make it on the show here tonight. Greatly appreciate all of you guys who do that. Could not do it without your support. And hey, great way to support the channel if you cannot do that is just to like the video. That is awesome. It really helps me. Obviously, share it. Make sure you're subscribed, but also leave me comments, not just in the live chat, but underneath the video as soon as this is done as well. All of that stuff really does help me. We've got Cyclone Steve in the house. What's going on, Cyclone Steve? Cyclone Steve says, if the Big Ten and SEC doesn't want NC State, does the Big 12 win both? I see what you're saying. Like, would North Carolina be a possibility there to the Big 12? No, I don't think that's in any way possible. And this is where, look, where's my, you hate the ACC guy, Mid-Atlantic or whatever. You hate the ACC. No, there's no way North Carolina would ever want to leave the ACC for the Big 12. Like, they would view that, even if Florida State and Clemson are gone, they'd view that like a lateral move. Remember, there seems to be a faction of like ACC loyalists at North Carolina right now that's a part of this whole too many cooks in the kitchen thing they've got going on that has made it all convoluted as to what's going to happen there. So no, I don't think that would happen. If NC State doesn't get the life raft and North Carolina is off to the SEC or Big Ten somewhere, do they become a Big 12 possibility at that point? Yeah, potentially, because then you're thinking about a conference really splintering. But there does seem to be more chatter these days about, like, could the ACC piece something back together that would be more of like your kind of Ivy League light thing? And would NC State want to be involved in that or come to the big? I don't know. Truly don't know on that front. And I think their sites right now are not even thinking about that because they're thinking, hey, we want to be a part of the big show. We want to get into the SEC or Big Ten. Probably SEC, though, on that one. Cat Fan in Huskerland, a.k.a. Daniel Osborne. What's up, Daniel? Thank you for being here. Much appreciate your support, as always, my friend. Daniel says, I am wanting K-State to win so I can go to my first College World Series with Barbara. Do you think the Cats have a decent chance of winning the Super Regional? Well, I would love that. Not just for you and Barbara. Obviously, I would. But for myself, look, I'm not too far away from Omaha, and I would absolutely be there. That's bucket list stuff, man. K-State is playing. Speaking of the ACC, Virginia in Charlottesville. John hates the ACC, folks. Look, I have a ton of respect for Virginia and their baseball program, okay? I would say K-State is the underdog in this super regional. Look at me, respecting the ACC. Much love and respect to my ACC brothers and sisters in Charlottesville, Virginia. It does seem to me to be, it feels more, if you would have told me even like a month or two ago, hey, K-State will be in a super, what are the odds? Like, what's that situation going to be like? This seems like a better situation than I would have guessed it would have been then. And it's mainly because, like, Virginia is not, I always anticipate that those teams in the ACC or the SEC are going to have 8 draftable, like top 10 round draftable arms. And they're just going to be, their pitching is going to be so damn tough. That's not what Virginia is. They can hit the crap out of the ball, but they don't really have a lot of pitching. So then it turns into, which is they're very similar numbers wise to K-State in that respect. So if it turns into, hey, we're just going to our bats against your bats, I mean, K-State can swing it too. I'll take that. I would rather take my chances with that than facing just a dominant pitching staff. Now, I say that knowing that K-State just beat Hagen Smith, who was the college pitcher of the year. And they beat him by scoring 6 runs against Arkansas on Saturday night. So, yes, K-State can definitely beat some of that. But if you've just got a whole staff of that and it's mano-a-mano in the series, that's where I feel like pitching wins out every time. If it's the bats, I think that gives you a better chance, can just be more who gets hot, flukier things can happen if you're just hitting the ball and putting it in play, as opposed to, if you're getting mowed down by a potential first-round draft pick. So I think they've got a shot. I'll put it that way, Daniel. I think they've got a shot, and you will definitely see me in Omaha if K-State does make it there. So appreciate you, my friend. Thank you for your support as always. Alan, what's up, Alan? I'm laughing at your first line there, Alan. Alan, our resident Kansas fan here, who does not like any of the SEC speculation. Alan says, John, promise not to go off on the SEC today. Still planning Sunflower Showdown road trip, and we'll host the pregame party for JK listeners. Winner likely to play Utah in Big 12 championship. Rock Chalk Jayhawk, Alan. Alan, I love that. I love that idea. We should definitely do that. We will find a way. Believe me, I've got something in the works here that will allow me to be more like in touch with you guys on more of a regular basis. And I think we can start doing some of those things potentially, which would be really, really cool. So I know last year, Alan, I told you like I wanted no part of Lawrence. I knew there was a very legitimate chance of losing that game, and I was not interested in going to experience that, but it's in Manhattan this year. So, look, I would be more than happy to help be involved in that. So we'll make it happen. We'll make it happen for sure. And yes, probably going to play Utah in the Big 12 championship. There was a list this week. ESPN's FPI came out, Alan. I imagine you may have seen that because it indicated that Kansas has the best chance to win the Big 12 championship. It was pretty slim margin, but Kansas and then Utah and K-State, the usual suspects there. But it also, FPI put out a list of the top 10 easiest Power 5 schedules, and K-State, KU, and Utah were all on that. I think Utah, Big 12 had 4 of the 10. Utah, I believe, was the highest on the list, followed by Kansas and then K-State. So, like, they had Utah as having the easiest Big 12 schedule, and then Kansas and then K-State, but they were all in the top 10. And, Power 2 haters would point out that 9 of the 10 were from the Big 12 or the ACC. The only other one was Rutgers. So that should make you feel, point being, Alan, that should make you feel better about your statement there that Utah versus KU or K-State in the Big 12 championship game makes a hell of a lot of sense. And I think it definitely does right now. Bob, I like this one, Bob. Bob says Utah will fight for the Big 12 like we did the Pac. Hey, salute. Again, salute. Bob, thank you. I want to mend fences with Utah fans. I'm not really here to do the bickering and fighting thing anymore. Let's see how it plays out. If it does turn into that Utah is kind of like a villain figure in the Big 12, I can be okay with that too, because you need some of that. But I'm much more in like building bridges mode on that one right now. David, what's going on, David? David says, I think you are correct. State of North Carolina protecting the other schools for when North Carolina joins the Power 2. The ACC took SMU. The ACC would take any Big 12 team. Yes, that is a fair point, but I would throw in the caveat. They took SMU with SMU saying, don't pay us anything. Don't pay us a dime. We'll come. Just let us crash on the couch. Pretend we're not even there. Just let us into the party. We'll be okay. We'll figure it out. They didn't. I mean, they're not taking any of the TV money, right, for the first 9 years or whatever it is. So if a Big 12 team were willing to do that, yes, I'm sure they would take any Big 12 team. They might still anyway. And your point is, I get the point that you're making. Hey, they were desperate enough to take SMU. So they would probably take somebody else. They would probably take somebody else that they might scoff at a little bit right now and that the university presidents wouldn't love or whatever. Yeah, I think it's a good point that you make there, David. I'm reading Ema Tom here, and thank you, David. Appreciate your support of the channel as always. If you guys want to join in, click the $ below the chat box to do that. Probably got another 20 minutes or so with you here. I still do have a lot of content that I haven't covered yet that I do want to get to. Oh, gosh, Ema Tom, Big 12 post-spring football tiers. I can at least give you I always try to look at the list here. We've got the Joel Klatt thing coming up, so I will get to the Colorado discussion, which just can't be rational. I should probably stop pinning it all on Joel Klatt, but it's just like the Colorado discussion can't ever be seemingly like a real rational discussion. Of course, I go Big 12 standings, and I get 2023 here. Like tier one is Utah, K-State, Kansas. And my debate there is Oklahoma State. I would put Oklahoma State in there. I'd put Utah, K-State, Kansas, Oklahoma State in tier one. I'd put like Arizona, West Virginia in tier two. I would put Texas Tech, UCF, BYU. Oh, Iowa State. Boy, I forgot about Iowa State. All right. See, this is the problem. Asking me to do it on the fly with 16 teams is tough. Iowa State's definitely in tier two. So tier one is K-State, Oklahoma State, Kansas, Utah, no particular order. Tier two is, who else did I have in there? It's West Virginia, Iowa State. I can't keep track of it all now that I'm trying to look at this. West Virginia, Iowa State are tier two. I had Texas Tech in tier three. Oh, Arizona, West Virginia, Iowa State, Arizona, tier two. Texas Tech, like UCF, TCU, tier three. I mean, and on down, we could probably parse from there the others, but I think that gives you an idea of like where my head's at. I do think that Oklahoma State, K-State, Kansas, and Utah have separated themselves just a bit. Arizona just gives me enough pause with the coaching change and all the reshuffling that's gone on there, even though I very much respect, obviously, the two-headed monster that they have on offense. So that's really the only reason. And Arizona will have a chance to shut me the hell up by coming into Manhattan early in the season. But I do feel like I would go that group of four just barely above them. Iowa State, I mean, you guys, I say it about Matt Campbell all the time. I think he's got a really high floor. I don't know about the ceiling, and this is the spot where when there are more expectations, he hasn't always really lived up to the hype, namely, obviously, the 2021 season when they went 7-6. So until he really proves to me in a non-COVID environment that they can go above and beyond like that, I'm going to have a hard time putting them in tier one, but they're definitely solidly tier two. So I think those would be like West Virginia. It's just it's schedule based, guys. And I know, that's another discussion that probably is a hot topic in Big 12 country, but I just think the schedule turning around on West Virginia is enough for me to think that they'll be knocked down to tier two. They'll have a chance to shut me up. K-State has to go to Morgantown this year. So that's where I'm at on the ones that I think like really, really get people riled up there. All right, let me make sure I've got this. Joel Klatt, Twitter. Joel Klatt, Coward, Colorado, Coach Prime. Yes, here we go. It's a long clip. It's like a 3-minute, 51-second long clip. We're going to go as this thing goes and react to it as it happens because there is a lot here. There's a lot here from Joel Klatt on Colorado. So we'll share the screen. Okay. You guys got me here now. All right. Joel Klatt, former Colorado quarterback. Joel Klatt is somebody that I respect a lot. I think he is an excellent analyst. I just don't love a lot of the discussion around Colorado, and this feels to me to be a bit on the homer end of things. And when we do that with Colorado, it just turns into a wave of kind of bad faith discussions on both sides, and you can get pigeonholed really fast as a Colorado hater. So let's listen. Let's listen into this interaction with Colin Cowherd.
Feels a little bumpy. They're getting into their feels. They feel like Colorado's doing a lot of this. Hey, there's a new guy in town. And everybody's like, shh. You were terrible at the end of the year. You look like old Colorado. With Deion, you get the hubris and the confidence. Love it. But you got to back it up. You got to win games against good teams.
What would you say about a 400% increase in wins? Is that backing it up? Okay. I'm just asking you. That's just yes or no. Yes or no. Is a 400% increase in wins backing it up?
Depends on where you start.
That's not a yes or no, Colin.
It's pretty good.
Yes or no?
Okay. I get what he's doing here. And by the way, perfectly fair to pin Colin down on this, because it's exactly the type of thing that like Colin would pin on somebody else. If you're going to go after the sports talk host to say like, hey man, 400% yes or no, give me the answer. That's well done in terms of like, building an argument here from Joel Klatt. The problem is, yes, Coach Prime, and this is where the discussion gets so off into like dumb tangents. He did a good job. And he did bring a lot more attention to Colorado. He infused some talent and life into the program. Undoubtedly did that. And going from 1 win to 4 wins is a really nice improvement. And we shouldn't hold the fact that this hype machine got built so crazy at the beginning of the year against him and how things ended there. However, just because he improved by 400% last year, like going from 1 to 4 wins is easier than going from 4 to 9 wins, which is where Joel Klatt is going to wind up getting in this clip, especially when you're turning over 36 players in the transfer portal. That's just a really tough thing to do. Basketball is much easier. And even then, teams that have taken huge swings in the portal, it's a crapshoot. Ask Arkansas fans about how that goes, even in basketball, when there are so much fewer players on the actual court. So understand the point he's making, but you can't take that jump from 4 to 9 and think that it's going to be just as easy because he went from 1 to 4, would be my opinion.
Yes.
Well, then, aren't we getting somewhere? I would just make the argument that when evaluating Colorado, you can't just evaluate them in the current state of the race. You have to look at the starting line. And they were, and I said this to their athletic director, whom I love, Rick, I love you. I said to Rick George, Rick, you're the most irrelevant program in Power 5 and the worst program in Power 5. He tried to argue with me and I stopped him. I was like, no, that wasn't a question. That was a statement, right? And the point of hiring Deion Sanders, among other things, was relevance.
First of all, that's Coach Prime to you, Joel.
Deion has hit it out of the park at Colorado. When you look at
now if we're going to stop there and make that point, I do agree. Are you guys not hearing that very well? I'm sorry. Let me see if the volume will go up, if that will change it for you. I do agree with him that Deion has been, Coach Prime, boy, I just upset my own rule there. Coach Prime has been a success undoubtedly at Colorado so far, based on how things have gone, because he's improved the program, injected life, gotten so much more attention there. He's about to go on to say, maybe I should have let that part play out, how much admissions have gone up for the university. Yes, it has definitely been a success, but that doesn't mean that they're going to be competitive for the Big 12 championship this year. Like, there are different levels to this thing. Are you guys not hearing any volume at all on this? Are you not getting any volume at all on this? Tell me if you're not, and I'll eject on the clip right there. Are you hearing it at all, or are you just hearing it softly? That's all I need from you guys. I just need an answer there on that, because I don't want to make you sit through absolute silence here. Softly. Okay, you are hearing it softly. Well, I cranked it up a little bit. Let's see if this makes any kind of a difference here. Where did we go? I gotta find my tab. All right.
At what they were, a one-win, irrelevant program, and what he has turned them into. All right, I understand that it went wild early in the season and it didn't finish the way that people thought it was going to finish based on what happened at the beginning of the season. However, look at what he did from an economic standpoint for the program, for the athletic department, for Boulder overall, and for the university. Did you know that the university, and by the way, there are people at Colorado, and I know who you are. You don't even like to look at things like this. At Colorado, they got a 68% increase in applications last year. 68%. Majority of those from.
All right. I'm seeing you guys telling me it's too soft. I'll bail on it. Volume's up maxed on Twitter in the browser and actually on the computer. But here's the part that you need to know. That look at it, you guys saw the tweet that was in there and the quote that was pulled out there. Quote, there's a chance Colorado is competing to go to the Big 12 championship game. That was the main pull here from the Joel Klatt clip. And I was rocking with him fine enough up until the back half of it when he says, look, I think they're going to, he said, I think they're going to win 8 games. And he said, I think they have the possibility to win 9 games. And that's where I can't get with you on that, man. I can't get with you on that. I think that is such a wide gap from 4 to 9. And I think there's a little bit of Pac-12 hubris there saying, well, the Pac-12 was so good last year. The Pac-12 was so good that Colorado was losing to all these tremendous. Pac-12 had a great year. Washington, Oregon State, Washington State, like how, it was a great conference. Colorado will be fine. They're going to win more in the Big 12. With all due respect, Colorado was not just out there losing to Oregon and Washington. And by the way, I mean, they got completely destroyed by Oregon when they played. John, I see you, man. I'm getting to the super chat. I don't read them directly as they come. I'll get to it, my friend. They got decleated by Oregon, but they also were losing to Stanford. Like they lost at home to Stanford. Like it was not just that Colorado was losing to the big boys of the Pac-12 who were really good last year. They also were losing to the teams that were not very good in the Pac-12 last year. And then they went through this crazy turmoil in the transfer portal once again. I just can't expect them to all of a sudden make that jump in a Big 12 where they're going to be playing. Like they were struggling with the teams well below that like middle tier Big 12 level. I mean, look, those first two, how many teams did I just rattle off in the top 2 tiers of the Big 12 where you're like, yeah, they could legitimately challenge for the conference championship. I mean, you can put together a list of like 8 or 9 teams that doesn't include Colorado. And Colorado last year was not up to that level. I don't really see, like, you need continuity. You need to be building. You need to keep momentum going. You need like a Kansas rebuild for me to feel like you can make that sort of a jump this year. Kansas had lots of that. They had continuity. Kansas had a big-time leader in the program. They weren't shuffling in 40 different players every single year as they built. This is a different kind of rebuild. I don't think you can survive, at least to the level of competing for conference championships right now at Colorado, doing it the way that Coach Prime has done it so far. And that's really the point here. And it feels a bit disrespectful to teams like a Kansas in the Big 12, by the way, to think that Colorado would be able to just flip the switch and do that. Another point that Joel Klatt would go on to make is, hey, they've got Shedeur Sanders. They've got Travis Hunter. Those are 2 of the best players in college football. Very true. But this is football, man. That you've got too many players out there on the field. If it were basketball and you had 2 of the absolute best players in the country, you can be really competitive. I watched Michael Beasley and Bill Walker at K-State, 2 top 5 recruits that were NBA players, completely transform the team from NIT to like until, well, I can tell you a soliloquy about Clint Stewart, a guard, having some issues. Once that started to happen, they weren't challenging for the Big 12 title, but all of a sudden, like they're in the second round of the tournament and they, for a time throughout that season, were legitimately like competing at the top of the Big 12. It completely changed the program. You can do that in basketball. And even then, I'm kind of making my own point. They didn't, like Michael Beasley was not enough. Michael Beasley, who put together arguably the greatest season we've seen from a college freshman in decades, was not enough to turn that into like a program that could legitimately compete for a conference championship, and that's in basketball. It is different in football. I just don't think they're on that track. And it turns into such a dumb discussion. Like, where did I see the comment earlier? I was going to bring this up just because it helped make my point from like RX here. So like RX, so Klatt is supposed to crap all over his own school. No, that's not the point. The point is he doesn't have to crap all over them. I think I would prefer that he be a little bit more realistic about where they are in year 2 of this rebuild. No, and this is where, and most of the time, this at least RX is around Klatt. It's not around Coach Prime. But then it turns into, well, so you hate Coach Prime? Like you don't like Coach Prime and how he acts and how brash he is, and there can be culture wars part of this that plays into it too. And it's like, no, like none of this is that. I don't hate Coach Prime. In fact, I like him. He's very entertaining. I'm glad to have him in the Big 12, but that doesn't mean that I think he's going to win the league. And that doesn't make me like a crazy hater. And I heard Josh Pate say this week, he kind of compared it to the Caitlin Clark dialogue right now. Like nobody can have just like a regular sane Caitlin Clark discussion right now because it just veers off into wild tangents that are totally unfair, and people will ride off with statements like RX. They're like, well, so what you think, blah, blah, blah. No, I'm just this is my opinion. Nobody can have just like a rational opinion about it. It turns into really dumb discussion. And we can't do a whole lot of that with Colorado. I know that Klatt tried here. He definitely did try, but I still think this is going too far. And then others of us have to step in and say, hey, this seems disrespectful. They're not going to win the league this year. And then you get pushback. You're a hater. You hate Colorado. You hate Coach Prime. I'll be interested to see. Keep an eye on this. What is going to happen at Big 12 Media Days, which is in just over a month, when we get the preseason poll, which has been sent out, by the way. So like, it's voting time for that time of year. Like, where is Colorado going to get picked? I mean, probably like 7th through 10th, somewhere in there in the conference. And like, what's that going to do? How is Coach Prime going to react to that? And then are we all haters? Everybody here, are we all just tremendous haters because we would put all these teams and programs that have frankly earned more respect at this point above him? That's my problem with most of the Colorado dialogue right now. Okay, John, I got you, my man. John says, hey, John, hope things are going well. We'd love to have you on the Cat Attack podcast at some point to discuss some cats and realignment. John, I am more than happy to come on. I appreciate the support on the channel. Definitely didn't have to do that. I would be happy to do it even without you paying me $5. I've got no fee on that. Just slide in the DMs on Twitter. Is the easiest way. I know Twitter is weird now, like if you're paying for it or not and how much you can DM. I know if you can't do that, just tweet me publicly and I will respond to it. We'll make it happen. I would give you other means of contacting me, but obviously with 218 people in the chat, I don't want to do that right now. But yes, I would love to do that. Love to do that. So definitely hit me up. We will make it happen. Promise you that. So thank you, John. Aloha Nate. Isn't the Big 12 the most competitive conference top to bottom that anyone can win? Why not Colorado? All right, like fair enough counterpoint there. If we're talking about like teams that would like wall them off from winning the conference, Florida State would be a bigger dam to stop the Colorado water from flowing into conference title land. Florida State would be a bigger stopper there, potentially Clemson too in the ACC. In the Big Ten, I mean, look, there's like 7 teams, Oregon, Ohio State, Michigan. If you go to the SEC, same deal. We know Texas, Georgia, Alabama, LSU. Yeah. Theoretically, yes. That is true. They would have more of a chance to do it in the Big 12 because there would not be someone there. But there are also then so many teams that are capable of beating them. It's just they're not going to get as many. Look, you could go to the Big Ten. You could play the Rutgers schedule that I just mentioned and have, I think, more weeks off than you would in the Big 12 because you're going to face a lot of teams that are definitely capable of beating you. So fair enough, Aloha Nate. I just still don't think they're at that level to legitimately be able to do it, even if the conference has less competition. Conference may not have the big dogs at the top like the SEC or the Big Ten, but you still have to be able to go win those games. Like, you still have to be able to beat the teams, and a lot of them that are at levels that I think are above where Colorado is at right now. Jim, what's going on, Jim? Jim, back to the topic at hand to start the show today. Jim says no Big 12 school is going to leave this conference for one about to lose its two strongest and possibly two more of its best schools. When those schools leave, ESPN will reduce the revenue. If they get below the 15, that's definitely a problem, right? That's when the ESPN TV contract can fall apart per the Brett McMurphy reporting. So if 4 teams leave, that is what would happen there. And yes, Jim, I think you're pretty in line with what my thoughts were to begin the show. The quote from Brian Murphy was just that he thought there were Big 12 teams that desired to be in the ACC. I mean, I can get, actually, let me just, in fairness to him, give you the direct quote. Would prefer, that was the word he used, would prefer to be with the ACC. He did not say would make the move, but he was answering a question of what the ACC could do or would do when Florida State and Clemson leave. So the insinuation there is that he thinks, hey, I think that they could put together, in his words, a Western division. But yeah, it's hard to find a realistic scenario where that actually works out. And I think you spell that out pretty nicely here, Jim. So I agree with you. I am with you, Jim. That's a good comment. Thank you for your support here on the channel, my friend. I much appreciate it. Let's see. What did I have left? I feel like I'm missing something that I did want to get to today. I do. I have something that I'm missing here, but I may have to just cut it off and make that a separate video. I will just give you a tease here. USC fans are very upset about the treatment that they're getting in the Big Ten. And boy, is that just foreshadowing for what's going to happen to multiple programs in these new Big Ten and SECs, right? Because they're going to start losing games. They will start losing games, and it will turn into a major problem for some of these fan bases that are not used to losing games. I think a lot of people are pointing the finger at Oklahoma being a very likely candidate for that as they start out in the SEC. But there's also, to me, USC. And Oklahoma fans will love that. Look, I'm being nice to everybody. I'm being nice to the ACC. Now I'm giving Oklahoma fans some fodder to get after Lincoln Riley. I'm a guy that likes Lincoln Riley, but he's never been able to figure out the defense. And now they're going against a loaded schedule in a loaded conference that's going to be a lot tougher in terms of just like physicality than what the Pac-12 was. USC could be that team that feels it really, really quick. So I would like to do a video on that this week. We'll see if I can get that done. I will certainly attempt to, you guys, but long live show today. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Please, if you could like the video on the way out the door, that would be awesome. I would much appreciate that. Leave me some comments in that comment section, which I'm sure nobody will have anything to say about this one. I'm sure nobody will have anything to say about this one and the topic and the Brian Murphy quote and all of that. Let me know about it in the comments. Like the video. Make sure you are subscribed. Please tell a friend about the channel. Spread the word, whether it's via social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, if you're calling it X, whatever, Threads, wherever you're at on social media. Let people know. Let your friends know. Let your family know about the channel. Justin is beating the buzzer, as always, our best clutch shooter, the Robert Ory of the chat. Justin says if ESPN does opt out, I could see a new ACC TV deal with Apple, Turner, and CW. If the money matches the Big 12 money, then maybe some Big 12 look at the ACC. Yeah, I guess, Justin, I would just say, like, who's in the ACC then? Like, who's striking that TV deal? If there's no, what are we saying here? Like, what's our hypothetical? No, obviously no Florida State, Clemson. There's not going to be a North Carolina. I don't think there's any way there would be a Miami. So then what are we talking? Utah, West Virginia coming into that? You think that's fetching the same amount as the Big 12? I mean, I like maybe, but I don't know how all that would work, because then you've dipped below the 15 when you're losing the 4 schools that I just mentioned there. So at what point I just think that seems so convoluted, man. I don't know. I feel like USF fans, you're more inclined, and I understand where you're at. There would be more of an inclination to like want to believe that and hope. It seems to me anyway, Justin, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but it seems like USF fans, have more of a hope of the ACC staying together because that could be a potential spot for them eventually, like super long term. So I get it, and I'm here for a little pushback on that. That still feels far-fetched to me. Just my opinion. Just my opinion, though, Justin. I appreciate you, man. Thank you for supporting the channel. And thank you for always being, as I said, the Robert Ory, knocking in some buzzer beaters here at the end of the chat. It was well done. That was a good discussion topic. It didn't even trash UCF. Justin didn't even trash UCF this time. So that's nice. Everybody getting along. Appreciate all of you guys. Even the trolls. You guys are here and you drive up the numbers and the interactions in the chat. So all that stuff helps me. I appreciate your work. Thank you for always working for the wallet of one John Kurtz. Thank you all. Take care, and I will talk to you soon.